Hi, welcome to episode 2 of the Needles, Knots, and Wool podcast. It's about Nalbinding and other ancient crafts with a modern twist. I'm your host, Amy Vandervoors. Today's topics include an interview with Maria Lind-Hill and a research paper on Nalbinding in the Faroe Isles by Osva Olsen and Ingvar Svanberg. And now for our interview. Today we have a real treat for you. We have Maria Lind-Hill on the studio today via Skype. I met Maria on one of the online groups several years ago in the Nalbinders and Ravelry group. She's an incredibly sweet and helpful lady, and is always ready to encourage a newbie Nalbinder. She's very active in the craft and Viking Age markets in Denmark and has a great set of Nalbinding and pattern booklets. We've had a few giggles over figuring out how much of a time difference there was between us and what time we'd meet, but eventually we got it straightened out. Hey Maria, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and I hope it's a nice sunny day over there in Denmark.
Not today, but it should be tomorrow.
Well, I hope it is for you tomorrow. Well, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
That's actually quite harder than you should think, but I'm 34 years old, and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Aarhus, which is the next largest city in Denmark. Denmark is part of Scandinavia, which is usually defined as the place where Nalbinding began. And I've been doing Nalbinding since the fall of 2007, I think. Other than that, not much to say about me. I do lots of crafts and things.
So, what are your favorite crafts and hobbies?
Well, besides Nalbinding, I do a few ancient handicrafts like weaving bands on a vegetable band loom and a little bit of tablet weaving, not that much. I like sewing, both my historic clothing and new clothing. It's not that easy to find clothes that you think is nice to wear, so it's easy to just make them yourself. Yeah, that's actually most thing with yarn and wool. That, besides knitting, I don't do knitting and I don't do crocheting, but I do Nalbinding instead. I have raw wool that I spin to yarn also. At some point I need to find my weaving loom. Oh, you can hear that English is not my it's my second language.
Oh, no worries. I so appreciate you're even attempting English. Thank you.
I have a weaving loom in my basement that I need to get up at some point, but I need to spin yarn for it first, but it takes some time. Most things with my hands I actually do.
Cool. So what are you going to make on the loom?
Fabric for my medieval and Viking clothing. That was my first idea anyway.
Since we have a Nalbinding podcast, what is Nalbinding to you?
Oh, Nalbinding is everything. Since I began with Nalbinding in the fall of 2007, I decided that not many people knew this beautiful craft, so I decided that I would make it some of my life work to get it out more to the public, not just to people who are visiting the Viking markets and the medieval markets, at least in Denmark. I think it's sad that normal, like not Viking people, doesn't know what Nalbinding is. Because it's a great craft and you can make anything with it, and it doesn't unravel, so you could just toss it in your bag and go on your way. And we need to get more people interested in this ancient craft.
Oh, I hear you on that one. That's important to me too. So it's so cool to find out that it's your passion too.
I know many people have this as a passion, and so we're not alone in this.
Yay! So, how did you get started in it?
Back in, I think it was about 2007, when I was a teenager, I started doing live roleplay in, what's it called? In Danish we call it a youth club. It's a place where you go after school in the evenings to meet with other people and take some classes. There were a role-playing class that I took, and then when I kept role-playing for I think it was about 10 years or something like that, and then I realized that when I went out doing these live role plays, I often would be a craftsman instead of actually role playing.
Mm.
And then some of my role playing friends told me about this reenactment group and told me what reenactment was about. And I thought, hey, I could dress up and do crafts and not role play.
Awesome.
So it was everything I was looking for. And then I became a member of a serious reenactment group here in Aarhus, where most of the members were students of archaeology. So they had the pulse on where you find all the finds about Nalbinding and textiles and everything. So they knew how to get the right sources for everything. So quite a serious group in that matter. And then knitting was forbidden.
Ah.
My mother knits, and she knits very much, and she knitted stockings for me. But then you can't really show knitting in medieval Denmark. I needed to learn how to Nalbind. So the first thing I learned to do by myself with a little help from some of my fellow members was a pair of socks. So that was the first thing I did.
And that's what got you started, huh? Cool.
And that was got me started. And then 2 years later, I began my booklets.
Good for you. That is awesome. Yeah. So do you have any favorite needles that you like to use? Any favorite styles of needle?
I collect needles.
Oh, it is fun.
I have a lot of needles.
Cool.
And I collect them. Every time I go to a market, I find a new needle that I just need to have. I have many different bone needles. I have walrus needle. I have mammoth. I have horse needle. I have so many needles that I don't know where to put them all. But I have about 6 needle hoses.
Oh, wow.
With needles. Not needles in all of them right now because I have many needles in different projects. So I just leave my needle and find another one to begin a new project.
So how many projects do you have going right now, just out of curiosity?
Let's see. I have my sweater, and I have a pair of socks. I just finished a pair of socks. I have to start a new pair of socks. I think I have a mitten, or I have mittens too, and a hat, I think, somewhere, and a shawl.
Oh,
I think that's it right now.
That's quite a number, though. So, what is your favorite project to do in Nalbinding?
Like the things I do the most, or...
Your favorite thing to make?
That's difficult because I like to make everything.
Okay. Well, then maybe what do you do the most then?
And especially new things. I like to make new things. But when I do make new things, I often make a booklet about it.
Oh, okay, cool.
But I don't have that, not specifically a favorite project, because I love everything that I do.
That is cool. So yeah. What do you make most often then?
I think that would be socks, because that's the thing most people want, that's socks.
Okay.
Sometimes wrist warmers, but I got a friend to make some wrist warmers for me in exchange for plant-dyed wool. So this year I don't think I have to make wrist warmers.
Oh, nice. Nice trade.
But I still needed to make a few socks.
Do you have any Nalbinding stories? Anything you're most proud of, or you have a horror story?
Oh, I have a humongous horror story.
Oh, do we get to hear it?
In November 2013, I had a workshop in Nalbinding at an evening school. It's called in Denmark. I don't know what it's called in America.
A night school, evening school.
Yeah, so. Yeah. And then when I got home, I kept all my things in a big, large, black suitcase. All my plant-dyed yarn, all my finished Nalbinding, all my books that usually is in my bookshelf, and some of my own booklets too. I kept that in this suitcase because I usually bring a lot of stuff for my students to look at. And then when I got home, instead of moving this large, heavy suitcase up the stairs to my apartment, I put it in my car between all of my things I had for a Christmas market
Oh, no.
Modern things. And then the next morning, my upstairs neighbor rang me and asked if I forgot to close my car door. The thieves only stole my black suitcase.
Oh.
Yep. As I said, humongous horror story.
Yes. Oh, that would be devastating.
Oh, I forgot there were 10 to 20 small bookbinders with printed copies of things I found on the internet.
Oh, what a loss.
As well.
I am so sorry.
Yep. Thank you. I still haven't gotten over it. I put it up on the internet on Facebook, and I still to this day get people asking me, "Did you ever find your suitcase?" When they just ask, it's just, no.
You poor thing. Oh.
But I've managed to replace most of my book. I still need a few that I had at that time, but then I got a few more that I didn't have.
Oh, okay.
So, and I did a lot of more needle binding after that, because I had a workshop a few months later, and I died my ass off and needle binded so much that I had very much to show them.
Well, good for you. Good for you for making up for... Oh, man, I can't believe they stole all your non-binding stuff. That would be devastating. Oh.
I was just wondering why they didn't steal some of the other things that were in my car, and not just a black suitcase. Just think about it. Look in the car. What's in the car? Do you think I've been on a holiday with all this stuff in my car?
I don't know. I don't think thieves always think through things. They just grab and run, you know?
So that's my humongous horror story.
We did talk a little bit about your projects, but specific projects you want to talk that you're currently working on?
Oh, let's see. What am I currently working on right now?
And it could be like web-wise, market-wise, too. It doesn't have to just be non-binding.
I have a sewing project that I need to get done by next week. A medieval vest, and it's a pant's leg, and then there's nothing in front and nothing in the back. So it's two separate legs.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't even know.
Well, I need to make that. And I have them done, but they're not quite done, and they can't get done before he tries them on next Thursday. And they need to be done Friday or Saturday.
Oh my. Oh.
But I'm getting there, and it's a bit hand sewing left almost, but it'll get done. Not a problem. And then I have some socks I need to get done by that time too. I also have some translated booklets that I need to get layouted. I know there are at least one that's translated that I need to lay out, but I think that might wait a bit to further on in May to do that. Otherwise, I need to prepare for an interview on next Thursday too.
Ooh, where?
I got contacted by a journalist from a Danish women's magazine that wanted to do an article about me.
Fabulous.
And then I asked if we could do it at the next medieval market instead, because that was closer to the journalist. So they're doing an article about me, not specifically about Nalbinding, but about me, and then I might mention Nalbinding a few times.
Might. Just might.
Yeah, just might.
Cool.
So that's the current project right now, I think.
Oh, you have a lot going on. Wow. Next question is, where do you see yourself going in Nalbinding?
Like my future with Nalbinding, or?
Yeah. What do you see yourself doing with it in the future?
Just continuing what I'm doing. Doing lectures and workshops and promoting needlebinding. That's the same thing I'm doing now.
Okay.
So just continuing making a progress for needlebinding in the public eye. If you can say that.
Yeah, it's most excellent. It's a good place to be going. So.
Yep.
Back in 2014, you put together a crowdfunding campaign to date a mitten. Can you tell us something about that? I
can. In 2013, I got a message from Anne-Marie Decker from the United States asking me if I knew anything about a null-binded mitten in Ribe. Ribe is about an hour's drive from Aarhus, where I live. And the first thing I thought was, there a mitten there? And then I contacted the museum asking if they had any information about it. And all that they could tell me was that the mitten was found in a medieval cultural layer in the ground. And that's it.
Oh, wow.
And I was just, okay, the medieval period in Denmark is quite long.
Yes.
So that could be anything from early medieval times to late medieval times. So I asked them if there were any chance that they could do carbon dating on it in the near future. And they said that they didn't have the amount of money that it would take to do that in their budget. And then it actually didn't take that long before I made a crowdfunding campaign with the acceptance of the museum that I did that so we could get it carbon dated. And so I collected money and we got it carbon dated.
What was the results?
As I remember on the top of my head, we got 2 results. We got one that was about, I think it was 94% that it was from 1150 to 1250. So high medieval.
Okay.
And then there was a 64% chance that it was more, I think it was more 1200 something than late 1100, but I can't remember right now. And say 64% is better than below 50%.
Yes, yes.
So it's more that period of time. So now I have so much more work to do between everything else that I do. Now I'm trying to spin some yarn on my spindle.
Okay.
I need to make the right thickness of the yarn. It's 2-plied, so I need to find the right thickness of the yarn to make it 2-ply, to make it the same as the mitten, so I can do a recreation of it.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. And then sometimes that's why it takes so long. Because when I have done that, and I may have had a chance to look at the wool in a large microscope to see how the wool is behaving, it may be a chance to figure out what kind of sheep it's from, if it even is a sheep.
Oh, how exciting.
It could be anything else as well. And then the process is that I want to make a booklet for the people who donate it, both an online version and a paper version in both Danish and English, because there were many Americans that donated to the carbon dating. And then just describe everything there is to know about the mitten, and then get a recreation of it to the museum so that I can have that besides the real one. And I want to make a pair for myself as well. And a pattern for it in the booklet.
Oh, you don't do much at all. Wow.
I have many plans, but it's not all the time that I get to do everything.
Oh, I hear that. But wow, that's cool.
But some of my papers about this mitten was in the suitcase.
Oh,
yeah.
Dreaded suitcase.
Yeah. So it takes some time.
Wow, that is just amazing. Thank you. So I know you do a lot of Viking markets and things. What are the Viking markets like, and do you have a persona for the event? And what are your favorite parts?
Actually, I don't do that many Viking markets. I'm mostly medieval markets.
Oh.
Sometimes I do. I like to say that I am an undercover Viking. Because earlier on I had a tent that I could use for Viking. And then I sold it and just had my dress for it. Now I bought a new tent that is a Viking tent, so I can go to Viking markets again. And I actually have 3 Viking markets this summer. But mostly medieval markets. So I jump between ages.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a persona because in Danish reenactment, we don't use personas. Most of us don't use personas anyway. So I'm just me in my dress, demonstrating all the nice handicrafts and having fun.
Oh, it sounds like fun. So did you have any favorite parts of the reenactment?
What do you mean favorite parts?
Is handicrafts the favorite part for you, or is it getting to be around other people doing the same reenactment, or?
That's a tough question. I think it's all of it, because the handicraft I can do at home, because I love them so much, so I actually do them at home. It's like a large camping site with medieval or Viking tents, and just people going camping in Viking tents. and in Viking dresses and suits and just being Viking for a week or a weekend, or just trying to recreate what it was like in a marketplace in Denmark in that period. So we recreate a history.
I know you have several books and booklets out on Nalbinding. Can you tell us a little bit about them and how are the translations coming? And then how do we get copies of them too?
As of this moment, I actually don't have a book yet. But it's in my plans, and at some point I might publish a book about it. But right now I'm just satisfied with all my booklets. In Danish, I have 10 pattern booklets on my own, and just a splicing methods booklet too, so 11 of my own, and 2 stitch booklets for left-handed and 2 stitch booklets for right-handed.
Oh, bless your heart for doing the left-handeds too. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm left-handed too, but I learned to Nalbind right-handed. But it's quite easy to do left-handed booklets. Just flip the pictures and change right to left, and then that's it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I have all the booklets translated into Swedish because I spend much time in Sweden, and I have been since I was 4 years old. So we have a summer house in Sweden, my parents and I, so Ooh. I go there a lot. And I'm almost every summer, if not every other summer, I go to a handicraft Viking camp or medieval camp a week in Sweden, where we just do handicrafts the whole week. And let's see, I have, of the 2 stitch booklets, I have one that is translated into English at the moment. I think the other one is being translated right now because I have people translating for me, which is good because I don't know when I should find the time for it. And then I think the pattern booklets are also being translated right now at some point. I think they will be ready sometime this year to be published. And then I've just published the stitch booklets in German. And the pattern booklets are being translated now to German also. I actually have one translating our stitch booklets into Dutch right now also. Mm-hmm. I would love to get them into Arabic. I think that would be so awesome to get them in Arabic. Oh, yeah. But I think that's just in the near future, I hope. Was that everything about my booklets? Did I forget anything? I don't think so.
How do we get a copy?
Right now, you can send me an email to maria.heel, which is my last name, at gmail.com. Or send me a private message on Facebook. Or go into my Facebook site I have, which, unfortunately, I wrote the text for the site in Danish. But if you write Nalbinding with a Danish O, that's it called in Danish, the double A. Okay. Then you should find it. It's called Nalbindingshæfter fra Maria Lind Heel. Okay. Which is Nalbinding booklets from Maria Lind Heel.
Cool. I will get a link for that for you so we can put it in the show notes. Mm-hmm. So.
And then you can actually order them from my Blogspot blog also, as far as I remember. I made a contact form where you can order them also.
And I saw some of them on Mielke's Fiber Arts too. So.
Yeah, she has some of the English ones. I traded some of the booklets that I'm missing from my shelf with some of my own.
Okay, cool. Good trade.
Yeah.
I know you have quite a few projects going on the internet. One of them I know doesn't have as much attention right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the Advent calendar and the Stitch Along sweater projects?
Sure, I can. There's 2 different things. The Advent calendar is, in Denmark, Advent is the 4 Sundays before Christmas. And therefore, an Advent calendar in Denmark is only 4 pieces. Yeah. And in Denmark, a 24-piece is called a Christmas calendar, because it's from day 1 until Christmas. And we have Christmas the 24th in the evening. So I usually call it a Christmas calendar, even though All of the other guys are calling it an advent calendar.
Yeah, sorry, different cultures.
Yeah, just precise, but that's okay. Just as long as we know what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But last year I did a 4-piece advent calendar for every Sunday. And I thought when I did the last one or the last 2 ones that, it could be so awesome if we could make 24 pieces. And then I thought, I don't have the time to make 24 pieces and 24 patterns for it. So I asked on the internet if anyone wanted to be a part of it. And many people did, actually. So I made a page for it, which is called Nalbinding Advent Calendar 2016, where people can join if they want to participate in making patterns for this booklet. I think we've got 14 names written down on the list right now. I don't think we have more than 5 patterns at the moment. But it's just May. It's just the beginning of May now, so we have a few months to get ready. Okay. And the patterns are being translated, so it's both in English and Danish and Swedish, and I think some German folks are wanting to translate them to German also.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Big project.
So, but there are many people in the different countries that are not confident with other languages, and should not cheat them from trying all these new patterns out. We're doing it this way.
I'm one of those. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And the sweater project. Well, last year I had a workshop at a textile museum in Herning where I made my second sweater done. And then I thought, okay, this is quite hot, this sweater. And I want to make one that's not so thick yarn. And then I thought, maybe I should do a stitch-along, because it's so popular in knitting to do stitch-alongs. This stitch-along is just a little bit different because we have folders where people can put in their own progress from their own sweaters. And if they have problems or are needing ideas for how to make the neck or the arms, or if they should start on the top or in the bottom, they could get answers and people can help them trying to figure things out. So that's what the stitch-along for those sweaters is about, is to show people that it's not that difficult to make a sweater, and it's just go out on it and just try, because it's not that hard.
Yeah, I got to participate in that, and it's been awesome to see the feedback and the help and the comments. It's just
and you're already done.
Yeah, I got one done. I want to do another one.
So. Mine is just waiting for me to get the time to just focus on that, because I think it's about getting a bit small somewhere, so I need to add a piece or add stitches and just, I need to just sit on my own and just calculate and just, get it done.
Amongst your
so I can start another one too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, a couple more questions for you. Do you have any tips for newbies who are starting out?
My best tip will be to keep on trying, because you can only get better. Some people just try a few times and think, I can't get the hang of it. But just keep trying, because at some point in Denmark we have a saying that there's a light bulb getting in your head or something like that.
It turns on or it clicks. Yeah.
Yeah, just it clicks and you get it. But sometimes it takes a while before you get it. And everyone learns differently. Some learns best if they have a teacher nearby. Some learns best if they can read it by themselves in a book or drawings, or just looking at videos. And because of the internet, we have so many videos with stitches.
Yes. So
it's just sit on the internet, have a needle, have some yarn, look at the videos a few times, and then do it and pause it. And just try, pause, and just repeat. And that's the best advice I have for newbies. Keep on trying, because at some point you'll get it.
So, a question I didn't get to give you beforehand is, did it take you more than one time to learn Nalbinding?
I think it did. I think I have a few beginner pieces. I learned from a book, Swedish-English book, on my own, in the autumn, at our summer house in Sweden, by myself in my own little room. Wow. Yeah, and she does it a bit differently than I do now. so it was a bit hard to get it to work. But I managed to make the beginnings of a pair of socks when I was there, so I got the hang of it. And the second stitch, that was the Oslo stitch I learned. And then when I wanted to learn the York stitch, which I was one of the first ones to learn in Denmark, as far as I can see on the internet, because after I did it and I posted links to this site where I learned it from, it just popped up everywhere.
Yeah, it's becoming quite popular.
Yeah. I learned that from a YouTube video. Just watching, is that it? And when I teach my classes now, I learn them the Oslo stitch first. And if they want to learn more, I show them the York stitch. Because the York stitch is so easy if you can the Oslo stitch.
Yes.
So it's just, is that it? Yep, that's it. That's why you learned the Oslo stitch first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. I had to ask because it took me twice to learn how to do one stitch, so I had to ask. So.
I think it only, I had a week, and I think I got it that week. So it didn't happen over months, if that's what you meant by it.
Yeah, I just remember walking out of class, and it was a couple-hour class, and it going like totally out of my head, and I had to go relearn it completely. So
that can happen.
It did. Mm-hmm. So what do you have for upcoming events? You've talked a little bit about it, but what are you teaching? Where are you doing Viking markets and stuff?
I actually don't have any classes until I think it's November or October, these evening classes. I don't have anything planned right now, that is, because it can happen really, really fast. Mm-hmm. But I have 2 markets here in May, one next week, and then another one in the last weekend of May. I have 3 in June, and then I have the Viking camp, handicraft camp, a week in July, and then I have European Medieval Festival in Horsens, about 20 minutes from Aarhus, in August.
Oh, wow. Busy.
And that's the markets I'm going to this year. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're busy.
Yep, that's me. Keeping busy.
Good.
Not a dull moment.
Where can we find you on the web?
Actually, if you Google my name,
okay,
there are many pages. I have a Nalbinding blog, which is very outdated, because I mostly use Facebook right now. My own blog is also outdated, I think, a bit. I put the 4 advent calendar patterns in the blog, and then you can find me on Facebook. Okay.
I'll put those links there. I'll hunt them down for you. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
That was actually the hardest question of them all.
Really?
Yeah, I think so, because there are so many things that you could say to people if they're listening, but I don't actually know what that should be. Otherwise, just if you're interested, just don't wait too long, because you might as well get on doing it right now. There's no need of waiting.
Excellent advice.
And needlebinding is addictive.
It is. It is.
That might be the most important thing. Needlebinding is addictive.
True, but that's a good thing. So
that's a good thing. It could be worse, and it's also stress relieved. If I'm stressed, or I'm feeling stressed, or if I need to do something and I actually don't want to do it, I just need to bind a few on my needle binding stuff. Okay. Just do a few stitches and then just... Excellent. And then I can go around doing my projects.
Yes. Little prep for doing actual work.
Yeah. So. And it's awesome to do on the bus or the train or just in public.
Yes.
Because you can easily have it in your bag. Unless it's a sweater, it's not that easy to keep in your bag unless you have a very large lady bag. Yeah.
Well, those were all the questions I had for you. Thank you so much, Maria, for being on our show today and for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us.
You're very welcome. And I'm looking forward to listening to it along with the other podcasts that you're making.
Oh, awesome. Well, I also appreciate the fact that you're willing to be my first interviewee. You'd be my guinea pig.
I'd love to be a guinea pig. Anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next up, Nalbinding in the Faroes article. Recently, in the mostly English-speaking Nalbinding group on Facebook, there was a reference to a paper called Nalbinding in the Faroe Islands. Of course, I had to check it out. It's a quick read of 9 pages, including the bibliography. Though it wasn't a new paper, it was published in January of 2004, I'll focus on what I liked about it. You can judge for yourself its strengths and weaknesses. The article's focus was mainly on needles and the archaeological finds, since they're some of the strongest evidence, and several are listed in and beyond the Faroes for comparison. The authors also list what needles may have been viewed by the archaeologists and historians as, and possible alternative uses for the needles. Finally, there's a nice summary of what led the authors to conclude that Nalbinding existed in the islands. As with most research papers and books, the bibliography is part of the gold mine. If you want to do more research on Nalbinding historically, I'd recommend going through its references for your own conclusion and hunting down the images and descriptions of the original textiles and finds in there. Though most of the references are not in English, but this is kind of par for the course with Nalbinding. And as with all things, the link is in the show notes. What's on the needle? Currently, I'm working on the Carbon Vortex scarf that will be the prize for the challenge over in my Facebook group. And I'm also working on a pair of mittens in Teal Blue Eco Plus by Cascade. I hope to have that done in time to have on my table for the Nordic boutique that I'll be at. Challenges and events. A new challenge I came across is a walk through the garden theme. The challenge is going on over in the German Nalbinding group, and you can enter for a chance to win a needle by Stefan Nemi Jost. Entries close June 15th, so you still have time to enter. Rules on how to enter are posted in the links below, along with the link to the announcement in the Facebook group. The Nalbinding Stitch-Along Sweater, started by Maria Lindhiel, is an ongoing challenge to encourage each other in finishing a Nalband sweater. Remember to make an album for your pictures so we can see your project. The Colorwork Challenge in the Nalbinders on Ravelry, where you use color in a fun way as you make an item, is ongoing also. The item can be whatever you choose. The challenge closes September 1st, 2016. I'll be demoing and vending at Singerfest here in Sioux Falls at the Nordic Boutique on June 11th. There is a Midwest Biking Festival on June 24th and 25th in Moorhead, Minnesota. And also a little tidbit of exciting news for my Shyrod Fox Facebook page. We reached 100 likes. I'm so grateful to everyone who's been following my shop podcast challenges and tips. Thank you. To share my gratitude, I made a pattern for earrings, and there'll be a link to that in the show notes as always. A non-Nalbinding related topic, but it's too fun not to share. The Draken Harald Harfagre, a replica Viking ship and its crew, are making their way from Haugesund, Norway to Duluth, Minnesota. They started on their voyage April 24th and expect to arrive in Duluth in August. On May 10th, they arrived in Iceland. If you'd like to follow their adventures, you can find them on their Facebook and webpage. If you have an event or a teaching opportunity you'd like to share worldwide, email the podcast at the address provided in the credits. Tip Tuesday. I have a Tip Tuesday meme on my Shops blog, the Facebook group, and Instagram. Topics we covered since the last podcast are taking out and tightening stitches, stacking yarn in your needle, and shrinkage when fulling. Well, that is what I have for you today. I want to thank Marie again so much for being on the show today. I so appreciated her enthusiasm and her willingness to be here. As for feedback, I would love to hear what you'd like to see in future episodes, topics, interviews, anything you can think of. Also, if you have any Tip Tuesday ideas, beginner helps, challenges, classes, events to share, or feedback on the podcast, feel free to leave a note in the comments below or email me at podcast@shyredfox.com. In our next episode, we'll have the Nalbinding book reference photo gallery, Nalbinding groups online, show us your needles. Send me a picture of your needles if you'd like to, and share your stories of how you got them and what they're made of. I also may have a Stitch of the Month. I think the first one I would cover would be Oslo. Music for this episode is Nova by Ahrix and is used under a Creative Commons Attribution license. This podcast is brought to you by Shyred Fox, your source for Nalbinding supplies, handcrafted items, and my daughter's line of Giga Squirrels needle-felted items. You can find me at Shy Red Fox, all one word, at my Etsy shop, Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram, or The Shy Red Fox on Tumblr. And you can also email the podcast at podcast@shyredfox.com. See you next time on Needles, Knots, and Wool. Thank you so much for listening.